Hello and welcome back to my channel, and in today's review we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series Leader Class Scavenger, yet another Constructicon closer to completing the really awesome looking Studio Series Devastator. And here we have Scavenger in his robot mode as he comes packaged. As you can see, I have tried my best to get this figure in a very dynamic looking pose. You could call this the pose when he's charging through the streets of Shanghai, or perhaps the pose when Optimus fires him down and he's about to tank over the bridge and into the power station facility. This figure looks absolutely incredible despite the incredibly ugly design that Scavenger slash Demolisher had in the movie. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the character, Demolisher was the character that actually appeared in the Shanghai battle. He was exactly the same character design, he just had a slightly different paint deco and was a different name altogether, whereas Scavenger was the character that we see in Egypt when they formed Devastator. Really bad continuity issues, but nevertheless we have got a fantastic looking leader figure out of him. Now, taking a look at the character's head sculpt, this is where you can really see some of the remarkable work that Hasbro and Takara have done. This looks exactly how it looked on screen. All of these different gaps and all these different layers overlapping where the mouth plate is looks really impressive. I really like the silver gunmetal wash that they've done for the mouth plate, as well as the black around the yellow sections of the eyes, and we've also got a gunmetal paint on the top of Scavenger's head. If we turn around now to the wheels, as you can see, these two are also incredibly well detailed, and these have got loads of different grinded in sections to really make it look as if though these would roll. Unfortunately, this wheel here is static, however the one that he actually balances on is free ranging, so I will show you how that moves in just a second. But as you can see, we've got loads of different sculpting and detailings for the arms, loads of pistons as well as wire work. I love how all the wires seem to lead off into various different places, and we've even got some detailing if we lift this section up under here as well of different vents. So a really detailed looking leader. I was actually quite surprised at how much detail they were able to pack into this figure. As you can see as well, here we've got this silver paint application for where this section comes around and clips onto this wheel, obviously to support the character. And this wheel too has also been incredibly well detailed and can actually roll incredibly smoothly. So you could, if you want, have him rolling along the ground. It doesn't so much work very well on a flat surface. If you have it more on like a fabric surface or a slightly rougher surface, it will roll incredibly well. This worktop here is rather smooth, so it doesn't have much to grip onto, but I can assure you that it does roll really fluently. If we take a look at some of the figure's articulation, he is actually surprisingly really well articulated for this really weird design. The head is on a ball joint, so it can rotate the full 360 as well as tilt side to side ever so slightly. It can look up all the way that far due to this transformation hinge and the ball joint, and can look down to about that degree. The arms here are on ratchet joints, so they can ratchet forwards and backwards as well as hinge upwards in order for you to get him into slightly more dynamic poses. The arms are on ratchet joints forwards and backwards as well as in and out. There is a 360 rotation at the bicep, however that is mainly due to transformation. When we get this figure into his limb mode for Devastator, he has a double jointed elbow, one joint here, a second joint here, and then finally a third joint for the actual hand itself, so you can move this around, and the fingers can split open as well to give them more of an alien insectoid look. And then finally, due to transformation and the overall design, he does in fact have a waist swivel of some degree due to transformation, and it definitely does work getting this character into some very dynamic looking poses. So overall, for articulation and detail, this leader class is really very astounding. And here we have the best I could do in terms of a full comparison shot of all of the Constructicons we have so far, just setting Hightower out of the way. As you can see, he towers over each of these figures. He's roughly the same height in terms of face value as Longhaul and Rampage. However, as you can see, if you count to the top of the wheel, he definitely dwarfs those characters. I don't necessarily think that he's to scale in terms of his robot mode, as Demolisher in the movie was an absolute astoundingly big character. Optimus Prime was roughly this size against him, but that is unrealistic in terms of a leader class expectation. So I definitely think Hasbro did very well in what they could do, and the vehicle modes as well as the Devastator combined mode all do even out fairly nicely, and I'm just so glad to have this character in a more updated format into the collection. For another size comparison, here we have the 2007 Studio Series Optimus Prime, and as you can see, these two figures are nowhere near in scale. You really would have to have Optimus to the size of perhaps one of the Studio Series RC Wachowski sisters to even get close to the scale that happened in the movie. But nevertheless, I think that the detailing here is just absolutely sublime. And once again, without making this figure perhaps a Commander class or even a Supreme class figure, there is no way Hasbro could fit the enlargement of Scout into their budget. So this is honestly the best we're going to get, and honestly, Scout to me really isn't a big deal with this character due to how massive and unrealistic he is in terms of a toy for Scout purposes. I think that these two look fantastic together, and you can still really get these two into some fantastic looking poses. For another size comparison, here we have Leader Class Scavenger compared next to Leader Jetfire, and as you can see here, these two are both really big leaders. These are probably some of the best leader figures that we've gotten in this wave. I think that so far the weakest one I've handled is the Dark of the Moon Megatron. The leaders for this line really do appear to be some of the strongest figures that we've got for the movies in many years, and both of these figures are incredible, and Scavenger definitely holds up to the expectations that Jetfire set in January of this year. Now we get into the area which I most dislike about this figure, and that is the transformation. If you have the original 2009 Voyager class Demolisher, you will know that that figure is incredibly complicated in terms of all the different twists and turns that you have to do in order to get him into the correct configuration, and this figure is no exception. There are so many joints in this arm. There are actually 3 different joints: this arm joint, this joint here, as well as this joint, and they all rotate. The head and this top will also rotate on their own hinge, and there is just so many different joints going around that you really have to pay attention to the transformation to really understand how everything is supposed to line up in getting him from both his vehicle mode and into his Devastator torso mode. Now I've got to be honest and say that the instructions for this figure are absolutely terrible. They are definitely the worst instructions, well perhaps not the worst, we haven't got to the RC triplets yet, but this is definitely a figure that you're going to have to more than likely use common sense to transform. So to begin with, what I recommend doing is actually holding on to these 2 bracket sections, taking this wheel here and just pulling them apart just like so. Now what I recommend doing is holding onto these pieces, take this wheel and use your thumb to push this away. This will disengage this whole piece, so now we can proceed to rotate these sections out. I would take the arms and just move those out to the sides and lift them up just to get them out of the way. Coming to this section now, you want to take these 2 pieces and essentially split those apart. You're going to want to rotate this section around as well as rotate this section around, and now what you have to do is get this wheel aligned with these 2 wheels here. So you have to take this, rotate this around so that we have these tabs inverted to how they appear in robot mode, and you're going to want to try your best to get this all aligned up appropriately. Now we more than likely are going to mistransform him the first time round, but what you have to try and do is align this slot and this slot up with these 2 tabs. Once you've done that, you've more or less going to have the basis for how this figure is going to end up in vehicle mode. Just snap that into place just like so. You're going to want to fold out these treads on either side. They do compress incredibly well. Fold those out until they click, and then repeat the same process now for this side. Fold that out until it clicks. Now what we're going to want to do here, and once again I have noticed an issue, is rotate these around, and you're going to want to take this section here and just untab it, and this will split this whole piece apart. Now there are 2 tabs here and here that will actually plug into slots under where this silver section is. You're going to want to try and align that as best as you can, so just snap that into place, and that will solidify these from rolling around, and repeat the same process now for this side. And once that is all tabbed in, we can begin to work on this whole section. What I recommend doing here is taking this and just lifting that out of the way. We can then take these 2 halves here and separate them from one another and fold those out. You're going to want to rotate this all the way around just like so. Lift this section out of the way. What you'll want to do here is take this arm and now untab it. It does tab in to this slot here. You're going to want to untab that and lift that up. Rotate that around just like so, and then compress this section here. One thing that I love about this figure is, despite there being quite a lot of sharp edges, particularly on the wheels and on the hands, there are no rubberized pieces whatsoever. So this really does feel very well made and almost like a collector's piece. Repeat the same process, so untab this arm here, and then this new tab will slot into there. So just snap that into place, bring this around, and now you're going to want to ratchet this in. And now if you look in the inside of here, there are two slots here that will tab into two tabs here and here. So you just want to align those up as best you can and just snap those into place. Come to this side and repeat the same process. Just snap those into place just like so. You're going to want to take these two halves here and more or less align those up with one another and snap the top half in together, and then flip around to the back and just align all of this and snap and make sure all of this tabs into place just like so. We can then lower this down to give it a more natural look. Coming to these sections now, you're going to want to take the face and just flop it forwards. These pieces here are going to lift up. You're more than likely going to want to move them together. So take them and lift those up with your thumbs. Lift them all the way up. These really are the most annoying pieces of the transformation. Rotate these sections in and once again fold these all the way in. Now what we can do is take this, fold this in upon itself and collapse this down, and take this piece here, fold it in itself and collapse it down. And here we have the Transformers Studio Series Leader Class Scavenger in his construction vehicle alt mode. Now that transformation process actually went rather fluid. However, I've got to say the first couple of times that you do it, you will find yourself getting some of the panel alignments misaligned due to how many rotations and various degrees that you have to get all of the different limbs into. But with all that being said, after that transformation, we are left with a very nice looking vehicle mode. Now it does have some gaps throughout it, particularly in this region where you can see this massive wheel, and then when you flip it around to the back and the top, it does look like an ugly mess, but from the side you really do get a very nice looking vehicle, and from certain angles it does look very nice. This is definitely the mode that you can tell Hasbro had to sacrifice in order to get an accurate looking robot mode and an accurate looking Devastator mode. However, I've got to be honest and say that I actually think that this mode is quite adequate and definitely resembles what we see in the movie. We've got some nice detailing such as this cockpit area, which has got some nice paint apps, as well as some nice silver paint apps throughout the main body of this vehicle. We've got some details of steps leading up, lovely silver paint apps for where the treads are, and you've also got various mechanical components in there. This whole scoop section, due to it being the arms, can ratchet at this hinge as well as ratchet at various other hinges, so you can align this to whatever way you so choose. And then turning around, we've got some nice silver detailing, and it does actually roll incredibly well as well due to it being on 4 caster wheels. And if you collapse these two panels up, you do get the figure able to roll incredibly well. So overall, for a vehicle mode, whilst not being perfect, it definitely does its job and is definitely adequate enough. Now turning to a size comparison, here we have Leader Class Scavenger compared next to Voyager Class Long Haul, and personally I actually think that these two vehicles do scale really nice with each other. I actually think that the entire Studio Series Constructicons actually scale quite well. The only one that I believe is slightly out of scale would be Rampage. Rampage in vehicle mode should be a lot smaller than he truly is. However, when in robot mode he scales well with the rest of the characters and as well in his Devastator mode, so I really do think that compromises had to be made. But for the most part, these figures all look really incredible. Now turning to Scavenger's transformation from vehicle mode into his Devastator combined mode, it is more or less just as complex as it was going from robot mode to vehicle mode, in the sense that it's not necessarily complicated in terms of how many steps you have to do, but it really is quite complex in how you have to align all of the different panels and flip them around in order to get the right look. What I recommend doing is taking this and just folding this out, take this piece here and collapse that down, come to this scoop here and just separate it, and you're going to want to pull all of this away from the body just like so. What we can then do is flip around, and then this slot here will plug into this tab, so just bring this in and snap that into place. What we can then do is take this and rotate this around as well, and now you're going to want to ratchet this down, and then this tab here will plug into this slot. So bring that down and just snap it into place just like so. Repeat the exact same process now for this side, so just collapse this all in, rotate this section around, and then just collapse this in as well. Bring this ratchet joint down, snap this into place, and then bring this down just like that. Now, as you can see, there is a slot here that will actually tab into this. You're going to want to give it an incredibly firm tab and to really lock that joint into place if you don't want this to be floppy when in combined mode. Just take it and give it a firm push, until it snaps into place just like that. Repeat the same process here, so take this and snap this into place just like so. What we can then proceed to do is come to this section and just disengage these wheels, and then now what we're going to want to do is rotate these pieces outwards just like so. Take this whole mass here and we're going to want to bring this towards the back of Scavenger. Just get all of this out of the way for now and repeat the same process here for this side. We're going to want to take these pieces here and collapse those together and rotate this out so that now the slot here, this big slot, is facing forwards. I do believe this is going to be the slot that actually tabs into overload. It is massive, so it'll be really impressive to see how overload turns out. What we can now do is turn our attention to the back of the figure, and essentially what you're going to want to do is try your best to get these pieces here rotated and round to the back. Now there is some maneuvering that will have to take place in order to do this, so just take this, perhaps bend that wheel back and bring this down just like this, and then bring this panel down as well. Rotate the wheel back into place. What we can do here is take these pieces and collapse those in, and come to this side and collapse those in as well. Now what we're going to want to do here is rotate now to the front. Now what we're going to do is come here and just rotate these sections up just like so, and then we're going to turn our attention to these pieces. Take this here and fold this down, rotate this around as well and bring that down, and then here we can just bring these up ever so slightly, bring this down, and we're going to want to clip these into place, and they do tab in incredibly securely, so give them a nice firm push, and then take this and lower this down on a ratchet joint. Come here to this side and bring this down and lower that down, and there we have almost completed Devastator's back. We just want to take these, bring those there, take these pieces, just recess those down ever so slightly, and then with all of that aligned, you're going to want to come here and take this piece, and then this should just tab into place. This should open up. It can be rather difficult to do, but you just want to fold that there. And with all of that fully aligned, here we have the Transformers Studio Series Leader Class Scavenger into his torso mode for Devastator, and this looks like it's going to be a massive piece once it's all put together, and actually has some really nice details. As you can see, some of the detailing that we saw in robot mode comes over from the shoulders, and we've got some really nice locking mechanisms. I really like how this whole back section actually becomes. If you watch my coverage when I saw this prototype over at MCM London Comic Con, this to me almost looks like the back of Devastator where it would all grind up. It definitely does give me that impression, whether or not Hasbro intended it to do that, but it does definitely look like it's going to be a really interesting piece. And now that we have Scavenger's torso, we can really begin to start pulling the limbs to Devastator together. So to begin with, I'm just going to set his arm off to the side and start off with Mixmaster. What you're going to want to do here is inside here, there is actually a slot, a circular slot on either sides of the back of these wheels. These are actually going to tab into these pieces here. The holes in this will peg into here, and then these slots here, these clips on the back, will actually tab into these pegs here. So what I recommend doing first is probably removing this section, just so that we can really see the interior of Mixmaster, so that we have more clearance when in here. Bring these sections out and maybe lift the hands out just for now. And what you're going to want to do here is just pull the wheel in and then turn to this side and make sure this wheel also aligns. Tab those together as firm as you possibly can, and with that aligned now, we can take these clips and bring these clips forwards if they have come undone, and just give it a push and snap that into place, and then come to this side as well and bring this forward and snap this into place. Fold the hand down and then take these and just rest those along the back. What we can then do is, of course, close all of this up, come to this piece here and snap this back into place. And with all of those steps completed, here we have both Scavenger and Mixmaster plugged together, looking really, really amazing. This looks like it's going to be an absolute incredibly detailed looking piece. However, we still have one more limb to show, so you're going to want to take this section in here and just rotate it around so that you show this slot here that will actually peg into this piece of high tower. So just align these sections up and give them a push together until they click into place just like so. And there we have the Transformers Studio Series, more or less the top half, completely finished, and it looks absolutely amazing. This really is going to be a phenomenally detailed piece and is going to be absolutely gigantuan. As you can see, I think that he really does come together really nicely, and it isn't until you get this figure in hand that you really get a sense of how tall he's going to be. I think that this whole arm really works very well. When I first had this arm on its own, I didn't think it looked too cool, but once you have it pegged onto the shoulder, you really are starting to gather a sense of how it's all going to come together. And bringing long haul and Rampage into the mix, as you can see, this is going to be a fantastic looking piece, and I believe that with Overload probably plugged on, he's probably going to be towering to about that degree, so he's definitely going to be a very large looking piece. As I stated, all of these Devastator figures so far have thoroughly impressed me. That all of their robot modes are really good. If I had to have any complaints, I'd say that the weakest is probably the arm. I'm not necessarily a massive fan of Scrap Metal or Hightower, but both Mixmaster, Scavenger, Longhaul and Rampage all look incredible. And just bringing out a size comparison, here we have that Voyager Optimus Prime. So as you can see, this really is going to be a huge looking piece. Optimus looks tiny when in the mix amongst all of these different components. Of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail of this, as I want to save all of that detail for the review that I do on Studio Series Devastator. But just as a short teaser, as you can see, he's definitely coming together incredibly nicely. So with all that being said, I do believe that just about wraps up my review for the Transformers Leader Class Scavenger, based on his appearance from Revenge of the Fallen. Once again, another terrific figure in the Studio Series line. Robot mode is fantastic, very accurate to Demolisher's CGI model. They're basically the same character. Really nice detail, good articulation, a really refreshed update on that original Voyager class version. Transformation, once again, I don't necessarily think it's any more simpler than that original Voyager. If anything, it's more complex. Vehicle mode, whilst not being as great as some of the other Constructicons have been, it definitely does its job. It holds up quite nicely, but from certain angles it does look rather ghastly. Transformation into Devastator's mode, once again quite complex, but once you get everything aligned, I do think that it looks really well done. And now that we are beginning to piece this character all together, we really are in for a treat once this is done. We've got 6 out of 8 Constructicons, and I really cannot believe that we've got this many in 2019. So I really hope that the last 2, both Scrapper and Overload, come out really early in 2020, so that at least by this time next year we have a completed Transformers Studio Series Devastator. I really hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, please let me know down in the comment section below, and also be sure to let me know your thoughts of this figure also down in the comments. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.